Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody, for coming here the day after a holiday. Appreciate it. I have a pen somewhere. So I think, first of all, let's just check in and see who is on the phone for the purposes of meeting minutes. If you could identify yourselves if you're there. Okay. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and then we'll go around the room and do introductions, and I'll do another phone call out in a second, just in case anybody jumps on. I'm Kelly Cole, and I'm the director of the Broadband Outreach Center here in the Governor's Office of Economic Development. We'll just go this way.
Dennis Sampson.
You turn that one around, and then you can pass it.
Dennis Sampson, Utah Education and Telehealth Network.
Ray Timothy Sane.
Jeff Egley, Utah Education and Telehealth Network.
Barbara Hollister, Department of Workforce Services.
Sean Sperry, Comcast Business Development. Seth Cottle, Comcast Business Development.
Eric Isom, MIB Partners.
Jennifer Summers with CenturyLink.
Carrie May with the Utah State Library.
Stacy Vincent with Utah State Library.
Dave Ryan with Strata Networks.
Damien Hinkley with Codell Electric Supply.
Verizon.
Sarah Teeter with AT&T.
Lynn Yocum with Utah Department of Transportation.
Michael Sashitis with Economic Development Corporation of Utah.
Matt Jackson with SAO Business Development.
Lynn Beecher with Go Fiber.
Roger Timmerman with Utopia Fiber.
I'm Emily. I'm also with Broadband.
You can just pass it around the back.
Bert Granberg with the State's Automated Geographic Reference Center.
For now.
For now.
Hi, I'm David Tejan with Rocky Mountain West Telecom. We do OSP engineering.
Randy Parker, USDA Rural Development.
I'm Jamie Welch-Jara with USDA Rural Development.
And Heath Price with USDA Rural Development.
Jack Walkenhurst with All West.
Diane Bradshaw with Direct Communications.
Natalie Randall with San Juan County Economic Development.
Tim Blackburn, Millennium Technology Partners.
And Brian Christensen with Horrocks Engineers.
Okay, perfect. And for those of you that are new with us, if you want to put your information on the sign-up sheet so that I have emails and correct spellings, that would be fantastic. I know we have a few new people, and then that will allow us to send you future information, so that would be great. And then, is there anybody on the call? Okay, all right. Well, we'll get started. We have a really packed agenda today, so we're just gonna go through it. But first of all, as many of you saw, we had something to sign this morning, or this afternoon. I'm so used to being in the morning. But as many of you know, Bert Granberg has accepted a position over at the Wasatch Front Regional Council, and we're super sad but super excited for him. But we have this token that we would like him to have, but we also want everybody to sign it. So we'll keep it running around the back, and I think I'm actually going to have him reprinted on his plotter because I didn't like the way Costco printed it. Costco. So yeah.
Thank you.
I know. Okay.
Cool.
So yeah, and it has the broadband atlas that we did a few years ago with some of the photography that we used for the broadband plan and the atlas. So yeah, and I don't like having signatures on the front so you can still see the picture, but I like having them on the back and you can just go crazy. So. And then with that, Bert is going to actually be at the beginning of the agenda today. So we're going to start off with our most recent maps of the month. And I think, actually, I'll let you take my spot so you can go use the computer. And if you want to give a speech, you can give a speech.
Okay, so this might be a little harder. I tore a few ligaments in my thumb playing basketball this weekend.
And he has nothing to do to get ready to leave.
Yeah,
Cheers.
so let's see. Give me 1 second to get oriented here. Help me, Kelly.
Do you want me to put it in? Oh, here.
Yeah, why don't
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, hold on.
So, this is, my career change is something that was totally unexpected, and, I mean, it's something I'm looking forward to. I trained in graduate school in transportation and modeling and transportation planning, and that's what led me to discover what geographic information systems were and to work in the field that I've worked in for the last almost 20 years. So I'm gonna have a chance to go work directly on the things that attracted me, mapping and map technology, and I'm totally looking forward to that, but it's completely bittersweet. I had a great job, and had, one of my favorite parts of my job at AGRC has been working on this project, and I was one of the, I think, original grant co-authors, together with a couple folks at the Public Service Commission for the State Broadband Mapping Grant back in 2000, either 8 or 9. I can't remember when we wrote that. So the project has totally been near and dear to my heart, and I've enjoyed my time meeting and discussing and sharing results and data and all that kind of thing with all of you. So thank you. And I'm not going very far, so you'll probably still have the misery of seeing me around occasionally.
And I would add, that one of the things that you've done really well is develop your team, and so there's a lot of talent in AGRC to draw from the developers that did the locate.utah.gov map, and Zach does the maps of the month every month, and so it's good to know that there's a good transition team in place.
Okay, I agree. So getting to this, because I know your agenda is full, we started this Maps of the Month series years back. I kind of went on a whim, and I went and I counted them back up, and I think we're almost at 70. I think this one might be the 70th one we've done. And I think it's a testament to like all the cool things that you can do if you have good data. And we have that with regard to broadband service provision and some of the other related things that are in the state's geographic information database. And it's really just been fun to be like, oh, what are we going to do this month? And probably 2/3 of the time, Kelly's like, we need to do this. And in general, we've been able to.
Less than half the
we've
time
been able to do it. So, but this January Map of the Month is just something I was like, what can we do related to the legislature? And I just kind of threw out this idea of like, well, how many broadband providers are there in each legislative district? And I didn't know. I mean, I know that the state and the broadband data pretty well, but I kind of didn't know what we would get back from looking at it this way. And so we made a map of the broadband providers by House and by Senate district. And you can go look at this later, but basically we colored the districts based on the number of residential broadband providers in each district. And we included all the consumer oriented broadband providers, so that includes the 4 national mobile carriers and Wi-Fi and landline, and you get the picture. But surprisingly, there were a lot of broadband providers in every single legislative district. And I think I've worked out the average, about 11 in each House district on average.
That's another town.
Sorry, I'll go back. 11.6 broadband providers serving each House, at least some portion of each House district, and 13.3 serving the Senate districts. Senate districts are bigger. They have about 100,000 residents in the state Senate district versus House districts have about 40,000 residences. And I just kind of made a little blog post about why was surprisingly high, and I think part of it is because in the rural areas, The districts include multiple counties and even more communities. And that just, you know, even in the areas where you might only have a few broadband providers to choose from, once you aggregate those areas into something that's as big as a Senate or a House district, in the rural areas, that ends up being a lot of providers. We also made a list of all the residential broadband providers for each district. So there's a link in the blog post to this document, which is better on a bigger screen. It's just a doc. Sorry for this. So you can see it's got House District 1, and it tells you who's got coverage reported from those areas. So that's map of the month for January. Map of the month for December was basically telling the story of one of the things that we've done with the broadband project, and that is to work with counties to create a statewide database of all address properties in the state. And I looked back and we really hadn't told that story, but I think it's one of the successes that is going to pay dividends for the state going forward from the initial federal state broadband mapping grant to Utah. And that's what all the address properties look like at a statewide level. All 1.1 million of them. And then you can see here, we've got black dots on each of the residences. That's what the map database looks like at a neighborhood level. We've got the house number, street address, and house number on each one of these properties. All 29 counties participated in building this. All of them are maintaining this voluntarily going forward, and so we're getting about 6 updates from counties a month that we incorporated into the statewide database. And some counties are even taking it to another level, and they're working on putting a dot on the map for every sub-address. So for every townhouse or a condo or that kind of thing. And I mentioned the payoff to the state. Number one, it's nice to know where people are if you're going to work on planning related and other related issues to broadband. It's nice to know where the service is, know where the people are, know where who's got faster, slow, what actual locations in Utah have faster, slower speeds, that kind of thing. So I think it's been, that was the original intent. But this data is also starting to be utilized more and more by the state 911 centers. So when they get a call from someone and they say, I'm at this address, they can validate that address and see exactly where it is at sort of like structural level detail. And in addition to that, they can, when they get a wireless call with GIS or GPS coordinates, they can ask the map data, what's the closest address to that location that the mobile device is reporting. Humans do addresses, machines do coordinates, and this sort of basically is a very precise level exchange between those two worlds that you need it to work well within 911 response. And then the last issue or area where I think this is going to be a big benefit to the state is in the 2020 census. And it's sort of an underappreciated story, but there are so many federal programs where the funding that goes to each state is linked to its population. And it's estimated that there are over $600 billion per year that get paid to states based on using the census data as a component of that funding formula. And before I dug into this, I would never have guessed that Utah's share per person is actually the lowest of any state, which is kind of wild. But this blog post includes links to those informational items, a chart for all the states' share of that $600 billion. But the bottom line is the same, which is the more people you count, the more money you get to accomplish those federal programs at the state level, which is, if everyone's going to get money, you want to make sure you get as big a share as you can. So that address, as the census prepares to do their 2020 census, they inventory all the addresses in the country as best they can with their regional offices and offices in DC, And we'll use the address point data set to give to them so that every address that Utah knows about will be in their database so they can best prepare to do a full count in the city when they do that. They call it an enumeration on April 1st in 2020. That's obviously a lot of work to try and go count everybody, to get it, the mail-in forms, the online forms new this year, and then the follow-up to make sure that everyone did submit their census form. They need this address data to plan that work and to execute it, and we're going to put them in a really good spot.
Good.
So there you go. 2 maps of the month. The December map really isn't a map as much as a story about map data, and the January map is looking at broadband providers by legislative districts.
Awesome.
And one thing, I actually need to leave a little early because I have to
Okay.
teach a class at Westminster today.
Sure.
So maybe let's pick that awesome thing up from you
I can drop by,
tomorrow or
I can
something
come by
like that.
tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
But, there you go. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Bart. Okay. And I'm sure everyone around the table is sad that they didn't steal Bert first from me, that it was such a regional council got him. So the next item, USDA here in Utah has a new state director, and his name is Randy Parker, and he's going to come and do an introduction. And this is his first meeting, so he hasn't really been here before, but you can just do an introduction, and then you'll get to sit through the rest of the meeting.
Terrific, and learn.
So nice to meet you.
Good to be here. In fact, as I go through a few things by way of introduction, you'll find that this is a major focal area that has been elevated by both the Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, as well as the President. So just by way of personal information, I'm a Utah native. I'm a farm kid. I'm not a carpetbagger that came in here with a federal appointment. I grew up down in Pleasant Grove, went to Utah State University. My career has been working in the ag area, Utah Department of Agriculture, Utah Farm Bureau. Oddly enough, Utah Farmers Union, and they're diametrically opposite of each other from a political standpoint. So when I spoke to the Farmers Union folks last Friday, having more than a decade with the two premier farm organizations in the country is somewhat unique, they pointed out to me. My appointment came from the White House through Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue. I've been on the job two months as of yesterday, so I'm still drinking through the proverbial fire hydrant. One of the issues that we're looking at, besides the elevated broadband focus, is the opioid crisis. And I've been appointed to serve on the USDA Rural Development Task Force on opioid addiction, and hopefully can help states like Utah that I'm surprised as I've gotten into this to find just how prevalent the problem is, and it seems to be more prevalent in the rural parts of the state than in the cities, which when I was a kid, that was just the opposite. You know, farms were a little bit immune, and the city kids were where the problem was. Just an introduction to our involvement here. On April 25th, the President issued an executive order promoting agriculture and rural prosperity. In that executive order, he asked the Secretary of Agriculture to chair a task force that will be looking at such issues as removing barriers to rural prosperity, advancing innovation, broadband being one of those focal areas. And about a week ago, the report came out. So any of you that would like to see this, it is available on the White House website and also the USDA website.
And we'll post it to our meeting minutes.
Okay.
This meeting.
The very first area, call to action of the 5 major areas was achieving I don't even know how to say that word, connectivity.
Yep.
Is that close enough?
Yep.
I struggle with that. I don't know if it's double N's or whatever, but anyway, broadband in rural America. And the introductory sentence to that says, in today's information-driven global economy, broadband is not simply an amenity, it has become essential. So that has become a focal point for us in USDA rural development. In fact, last week when the president was speaking at the American Farm Bureau Convention in Nashville, he talked about the importance of this in moving rural communities to be more prosperous. And as a part of his presentation to the American Farm Bureau, he signed 1 executive order and 1 memorandum. The executive order is streamlining and expediting requests to locate broadband facilities in rural America, which is available on the White House website, and a memorandum to the Secretary of Interior. Now this, for a state that has almost 70% of its land under federal ownership and management, BLM and Forest Service, this is the idea behind this is to help expedite placement of facilities. So that's going to be very helpful for all of us as we're looking at connecting our rural communities to the rest of Utah. So that's kind of my introduction to me. I'm excited about being part of this team that's focusing on rural Utah. When you look at rural Utah, Utah is one of the most urban states in the nation, and I don't need to quote statistics to you, but less than 8% of our population is in rural communities. So there's, I guess that is the linchpin to why sometimes they get left out of discussions and the dynamics of what we're doing as a state. I'm glad to see this focus from the national level, and I think it equates right back here to the local level, because the governor's 25,000 jobs initiative by 2000, that's going to be driven by how our rural communities are connected. So we have a big place in this. I guess at that point I'd ask if there are any questions. That's me.
What's your official title?
State Director of USDA Rural Development. All right, it's good to be with you.
Hi, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Do you,
Can you turn on your microphone?
Sorry.
Is this gonna be up Utah State, Tara?
What?
Go
Yes,
Aggies.
go Aggies. Yeah, go Aggies all the way.
Go Vikings.
I'm with you there too.
PG right here, yeah.
I'm a PG Viking too, so, all right. A little before you.
My question, and I apologize if you're just brand new to this, just tell me, I'll get back
I
to you.
am very new.
Okay, well then, I'm gonna ask.
But shoot, because we've got a couple of experts there.
So I'm curious, and I haven't dug into this much, but just from your big picture overview, what's the difference between the president's order on broadband and the previous administration's executive order on broadband?
I would say, well, and I wasn't part of the last administration, but I feel like there is a tremendous commitment here, and there are going to be resources. In fact, I hadn't planned on noting this, but we just got an announcement today, stakeholder announcement, that talks about how USDA is going to streamline our processes for putting resources on the ground. Our expectation is with this being prioritized where it's at, and that no promises, but that we have resources to help be a player in this product. That would help me if you guys have any more thoughts on that.
Oh, I would just say, you know, every administration has their kind of emphasis, and I think that broadband and expert connectivity seems to be trumps equity. So what we're looking at is not necessarily new funds for these expansions and developments for broadband and other but I would say that, they're looking at the programs we have now and looking at what the barriers are to expanding these programs and making them more available and easier to apply for. And they're, you know, putting a little bit more attention on where we can improve those processes. That's about it.
Thank you for that. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, and I hope I didn't misspeak, but my hope is that we have the resources to help be a partner with you all around the table to do what the president's directive is to connect rural communities and help rural America prosper. That's what we're shooting for. I think all of us want that. Thanks.
Okay, so next up on the agenda, we're going to have an update from Barbara Hollister on the lifeline verification process that she's been working on.
The national verifier. Does anybody here not know what the national verifier is?
Really quick, yeah.
Okay. The national verifier is a way for USAC to quickly determine eligibility in the state of, well, it's starting in the state of Utah, it's gonna be national. Individuals who are on federal assistance already, SNAP, Medicaid, TANF. TANF isn't one of those programs anymore, but that's one of the ones that we do. So they started with the state of Utah for the national verifier. We helped them create the process, and so we are right now in that pilot phase. We built it, it's been up since I think August through October 2017, and up and ready. We are still in a test phase, but we have moved past the phase of DWS fixing anything that needs to be fixed for USAC, and we've moved on to the FCC security phase. And so we are testing now in the security phase. We are planning the implementation for soft launch, meaning you all can get in and test your systems against USAC so that you can do eligibility quickly through the USAC process till March. And then between March 1st to March 12th, 13th, that will be the soft launch period. The hard launch will be March 13th until March 31st. At that point, DWS, as far as doing eligibility for the application or any new customers coming in right now, will transition fully over to USAC. So that's the plan for right now. Everything's on schedule and everything's looking pretty good for right now. Does anybody have any questions? I'll just tell you a couple of things that we're doing at Workforce Services to prepare that transition is aligning our web pages with USAC's web pages and aligning our IVR system with our eligibility, Rosalinda doing the eligibility here with USAC. And so those things will happen at the end of March. Until then, we're here doing the same job that we've always been doing, just kind of helping along with that national verifier as well. So do you all have any questions? Did I lose you? It's quick.
No, they're letting you off easy.
I know, right? Well, if you have questions, Kelly knows how to get a hold of me.
Yeah, and thank you for working with USAC. I mean, I kind of lined you guys up and you guys just went full force with them.
We are still working with them. We are still working with what we feel that they should anticipate from what their customer service reps are gonna be receiving and hearing from customers, as well as, carriers and what those needs might be. So we'll probably have a few more sessions with USAC on conversation and trying to help them anticipate. I don't know how many other states they've reached out to yet. I reached out to Eileen, but she wasn't able to get back to me today.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me come.
Of course, of course. So our next set of presenters, so we have Carrie Mae and Stacy Vincent with the Utah State Library. I'm not sure if everybody realizes this, but Donna Jones Morris, who's our our fearless state librarian. She actually retired 2 months ago.
No,
I don't-
just 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Seems
And
like
so-
2 months.
And so they are actively looking for her replacement, and so they don't have a state librarian right now. And anyway, so they are going to do a presentation on digital inclusion and some of the efforts that have been going on. There's been a group that's been formed and is working together. They don't have an official name yet, but they're working through bringing partnerships together, and they're in the very beginning stages. And so I'll just let you guys take it from there.
Thank you. So I'm Carrie and this is Stacy, and I'm kind of acting as part of Donna Jones-Morris during this transition. So I'm usually the assistant director and acting state librarian right now. And Randy, apparently the first time you come to the meeting, they put you on the agenda. So this is our first meeting as well, and Kelly said, go ahead and speak. So, and since I haven't been here before, just indulge me for a couple minutes on some of the roles that the state library plays, both in broadband connectivity and in training and availability and access to the internet. We do provide access to online resources, subscription databases, including current and historical newspapers. State publications are managed through our state library. We have downloadable audiobooks and ebooks. If you all need something to listen to on your commute, check out Overdrive and connect through us for that. Some of the challenges that we find, though, as we're trying to offer these resources statewide, is if you don't have access to the internet, you can't use the resources we have. So we have worked with UETN to provide connectivity to a lot of our public libraries. Almost half of the public libraries in the state connect through UEN. We also try to help determine the best amount of broadband and bandwidth that is available for libraries and help advocate for them to get their best connectivity that they can. We also try to help with devices. One of the things that we're working on through digital inclusion is wireless hotspots that are checked out from the library, MiFi, so that mobile hotspots can be checked out to individual families. And then the other large piece of what we do is we try to help with training, both for librarians so they can train their staff, and for the patrons that come to the library. Digital inclusion and connectivity is only as good if you know what to do with the fancy new gadget that you have. So that is a role that the public libraries play in the state of Utah. We also provide bookmobile services to rural parts of Utah. We have 7 bookmobiles that travel over 100,000 miles every year to 11 counties and serve residents in those remote locations. I feel like I'm going in and out on my voice here, sorry. And in some of the places where the bookmobiles stop, they don't even have internet connectivity in those areas. So even though they're trying to bring connectivity to some of these areas, there's about a handful of bookmobile stops where they don't even have access to the internet. They have to do everything manually when they check out books at those stops. So with the state library's presence in libraries throughout Utah, when we started this conversation about digital inclusion and what can we do in this arena, the state library felt like we were a natural partner for that project. And we had an opportunity last year to hire a couple new staff members, and at that time we chose to advertise and fill a position of library consultant for innovation. And there's a couple of parts to that job, and that's Stacy's role at the state library, is that doing some assessment of the technology that is currently available at libraries, and that includes the speed, but also the equipment, and also the ability of staff to be able to use that equipment. We also look at training and outreach needs that are seen in those libraries. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Stacy, who will talk more specifically about the digital inclusion project and where we're going with that.
Thanks, Carrie. As she mentioned, my name is Stacy Vincent. I am a newer employee with the Utah State Library Division, where my focus is much more on technology and innovation. Previously, I was a public librarian with the Salt Lake County Library System, and that's really where my interest in digital inclusion began. And pardon me if I cover territory that a lot of you are already familiar with. I'm going to guess some of you are pretty familiar with the field of digital inclusion. But in the world of digital inclusion, they talk a lot about the 3 legs of digital inclusion. That's device access, broadband access, and the skills to use it. So this group here, you guys have a huge amount of influence over broadband access, which is fabulous because that is a huge leg up when people have access to that. But the other 2 pieces as well, devices and skills, those are just as important because if somebody has broadband, but they don't have a device to access it, or they don't have the skills to access it, what good is it? So here in Utah, we've been working to form a group around those 3 legs to help address those and help Utah residents gain those things. And as Kelly mentioned, this group does not yet have a name. We're still working on that. But the point of the group is going to be to address a lot of these same things. And so some of the reasons as to why this issue is important, why we're forming the group, that's because people who don't have access to these 3 things, they're left behind. Kids are left behind at school because these days teachers require them to go online to check their grades, access their homework assignments, do research for their homework assignments, even submit their homework assignments in elementary school. They have to use the internet. And let me tell you, when I worked at the Kearns Public Library, I would love to see all of you come and visit the Kearns Public Library after school and see a child try to do homework on one of our computers. It was noisy, chaotic, not ideal. So I'd love to see more of them have that access at home. Jobs are a pretty obvious one these days. 80% of jobs are only advertised online, and they also require online applications. So if you're not online, you're missing out on that. You also just can't participate fully in modern society if you don't have these 3 things. You can't read the news that other people are reading. You can't file your taxes. You can't create content. You can't have a blog. You can't have a website. So it's just really essential, as I'm sure you all know. So why is it important in Utah? Well, in Utah, we're kind of fortunate that we have one of the highest rates of broadband access in the country, but that access doesn't necessarily translate into device access and the skills to use it. So, as I mentioned before, this group is coming together to kind of address these 3 pieces, and the lady who's kind of leading the charge is named Shauna Hudson. She is the Digital Inclusion Manager at the Salt Lake City Library. Fabulous lady. She and I participated in the N10 Google Digital Inclusion Fellowship together in 2016, and that's kind of where some of this started. We use a lot of the skills that we learned during the fellowship to help create this organization. And this is going to be a statewide organization made up of voluntary partners. And just to give you an idea of some of the partners so far, we have the Salt Lake City Library, the Salt Lake County Library, the State Library, Google Fiber, Mobile Beacon, HUD, Salt Lake Housing Authority, Utah Nonprofit Housing Authority, or Utah Nonprofit Housing Corporation, and more. So it's a very robust group. We've got nonprofits, we've got for-profits, we've got government agencies, and if you have anybody who you think should be at that table, please let us know. Kelly can...
Yeah, and I can forward your information to them.
Kelly's been at those meetings and she's been participating in the process. Did I leave anything out, Carrie?
So what are the names of those meetings again?
We don't have a name yet.
This is very new.
It's been broadly, the Digital Inclusion Coalition is kind of where we started, but it's like we need a more clever name that has a better acronym than that. So
yeah,
we don't have a name yet.
But if you're interested, just get in touch and we'll keep you abreast of what's going on.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they would love to have private partners come to the table. And I think there probably are companies that are interested in doing that. So I'm happy to line you guys up and invite you to the meetings. Just let me know if you want to be on that list, and I will forward it.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions really quick? Okay, thanks. Okay. our next update. Okay, so we're actually ahead of schedule today. So our next update will be from Gordy Coles from the Utah Communications Authority. As many of you know, Utah has announced that we've opted in to FirstNet, and so he's going to give us kind of an update on what's going on with that.
Okay, welcome everybody. Good to be with you this afternoon. Yeah, as Kelly just said, we've opted in. Governor Herbert opted in on November 6th. We're the 31st state to opt in. We're kind of in the middle of the pack there, but there's not a whole lot of information yet. Talked to Tracy Burdock this morning. She told me we're still under the NDA. Maybe Gary can clarify that a little bit, but I talked to Shay Cook, and he mentioned that I could share the map of the new site builds. I know last time we met, you guys were interested in that. Is that okay?
That's up to you, I think.
Okay, because I'm happy to share it. Just want to make sure that AT&T's okay with it, because that's kind of what Tracy was telling me this morning, that we're still under the NDA, can't share too much information, so.
I don't want to give you a yes or a no right now.
Okay. All right, well.
Yeah, I'm not the lawyer.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go with what Shay told me when we met, that I could show it to you. I can't give you a copy of it, he said, and he would prefer you didn't take pictures of it. But I can show you the map, and you can see where some of there's 16 new site builds that AT&T has proposed to put here in Utah. There's I think there's 5 of them along I-70, which is really great news for us. I-70 has always been a problematic area for communications, and so this will be good for I-70. And there's several others. And you have something, Lynn, you're frowning over there. Okay. You're squinting, okay. All right.
It's old eyes.
I know that feeling. So anyhow, we've opted in. I'll show you the site builds here in a second. We can plug this one on.
Do you want me to play?
We also submitted for the second round of SlickB grant funding, so we can work over the next 2 years with FirstNet and be participating in that. One of the things they told us we could do with that grant money is each IOC is completed, where they'll allow us to go through the grant and drive test that area and identify gaps. So we put into the grant some funding there for the test equipment to do that, and to hire somebody to come in and drive test. So we're looking to do that, and then there's other things. FirstNet will be initiating with AT&T the outreach. We're not going to do the outreach like we did in the first round, where we were initiating that and coming out to things. And what we're planning on doing with that is, most of you are aware, UCA was reorganized, our governance board was reorganized with Senate Bill 198. So we have a 9-member board in there. To advise that board, they've got a radio advisory committee, and that's made up of 19 members, which aren't fully constituted yet. Last board meeting they added a few, but the state's broken up into 7 homeland defense regions, and they'll have a committee in each one of those 7 regions, and the committee chairs of each of those 7 committees will be on this radio advisory committee to the UCA board. And so what we're planning on doing is going out to those committees and meeting with them down at the grassroots level to talk to them about their needs and bring that up to the board, and then we'll be able to articulate that back to FirstNet and AT&T so that we can make sure that your coverage needs are met, that you're getting what you need out of FirstNet. And as far as the adoption and FirstNet selling the FirstNet service, that will be AT&T. They'll be coming out and doing that. We're not going to be doing that. So, but we will help facilitate that, and that's a part of the grant too. So there's concerns. You know, we did a white paper. It's called the Cost to Opt-in States. FirstNet, of course, is building the RANs in the states. All the states have opted in, so there's no cost to the states for that. But there's costs involved for managing the devices and the data and the local control, things like that. So we did a white paper to kind of help the stakeholder understand what each of the agencies are going to be looking at and be involved with in that. There's going to be some costs. There's going to be some personnel that need to be assigned to those things. So we're just looking to use the grant to help with that. That white paper's been completed. We had a company that we worked through called Scientific Applications International to help us out with that. That's about as big as it's going to get. Let's see. the 16 site builds.
Yeah.
Not showing?
Are you able to pull it up on, is it web-based? Can you pull it up on? Okay.
Okay. Kinda hard to see it, so I don't know if I can get it much bigger than that. No, I can't see it. Technology, right? Always fun. And I guess there we go. See if I can duplicate it here so I can get it on both. Okay, now I can see it too. Let me blow it up here, we can scroll a little bit if we need to. Okay, so up north, there's some sites here. Ones that we were mostly concerned with, when we did our coverage objectives, submitted that to FirstNet a couple of years ago, the state plans came out and these, along I-70 here, these 5 sites weren't there, and we were really concerned with the coverage there, and that was one of our priorities, and so we met with AT&T, and they agreed to build some sites there to help with that coverage along I-70. And these are proposed sites, and they're not, we don't have longitude and latitude yet. They've got to go out and get property and go through all the process of working with property owners to have an actual location. So we don't have longitude and latitude of the sites yet, but these are the general areas of where the sites will be. So those 16 sites will help with some spots that are problematic and that we felt like were priorities in Utah. So some states got a lot more, some states got less, so it's just, this is what we got, and this, probably within the first 5 years of these sites will go in.
Had one in St. George.
Yeah, need some more down there.
Yeah.
So it's a 25-year contract, and that's where we say we're going to work with FirstNet and AT&T on this and identify gaps and work with, try to get coverage in where we need it in other places besides these. So, sir.
Are all of these sited on private property or on state land?
It's a variation. A lot of our sites for UCA, and in fact, AT&T's approached us, and we've given them, they asked for all of our site locations to possibly partner with us if there's any that they could utilize. So we've done that. We've given them all of our sites with longitude and latitude, types of towers, what the transport is, what the location is, so that they can start looking at those sites and seeing if there's any that they can utilize. But they're BLM sites or Forest Service sites. There's some private sites that we lease property from. Some the state actually owns. So
The question is, I guess, how you are, or we as a state are dealing with the federal agencies on those sightings, how the Forest Service has been, how the BLM has been, because I have the opportunity to provide feedback on that.
So they're generally pretty good to work with. Their processes and the requirements are pretty stiff. And we've had cases where it's taken us 3 or 4 years to get a site approved on a new site build. We've actually had to go through a couple of years worth of red tape to actually just change the site. It's an existing site. We wanted to put a new building and a new tower, and making those changes caused a lot of consternation with the BLM. So,
Gordy, if I could add to this, so I'm with AT&T too, so, this was a process where we got input from, the state's plan review team. A lot of people at this table were part of that process, and I will say, especially on those I-70 sites, that's gonna be, it's gonna be a hurdle, and Lynn knows this. It's gonna take partnership, it's going to take, cutting through some of the typical, time frames that we dealt with federal land.
That would be all BLM not across there, and this directive from the president is specific to streamlining that process, so hopefully that will.
Well, it's good we have some backing from high up,
Yeah,
because
it's good to
we've been
know.
trying for many, many, many years to get coverage on I-70. We've tried to work through the carriers, and we just can't get anybody, we just couldn't get anybody's buy-in to go out there and ruin the scenic area. It's a very scenic area, and people are very particular about that. They don't want towers on the horizon. So hopefully we can cut through some of that red tape and get some sites put in. Because we would eventually like to partner and put some LMR sites out there as well. So
Well,
we
this,
could use-
I mean, it's an issue of public safety as much as anything,
Right.
and so, I think that's part of the focus here, but there are still a lot of areas, not just I-70, that, I'm thinking of up over from Scipio to Ridgefield. There's nothing through there, there's just a lot of opportunities if we get these agencies, and the president has said he wants to see that change, so I think that's important.
Yeah, that is a dead area through there. No cell phone coverage through that area, going towards Aurora. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So that's where we're at right now. I don't know that I have a whole lot more information that I can give you, but, hopefully with the Slick B 2.0, we'll be able to utilize that grant money for some good purposes, and it's a 2-year period, so, yes.
Are these all gonna be new builds, or are there opportunities for co-location if there are existing sites that are there?
These 16 are new builds, so.
They have to be new builds.
Don't know that they have to be. This is what they're gonna be new builds. The ones along I-70 are gonna be greenfield. There's nothing there, so they gotta start from scratch. But the AT&T's looking to partner. So if you're interested in that, FirstNet has a spot in their website where you can go in and say, I'm interested in doing business with FirstNet. Throw your hat in the ring. Any other questions?
So just one clarification, the area along I-70 where those 3 green dots are.
These 3.
I'm pretty sure that those are Forest Service. I think they're far enough west that they're Forest Service and not BLM, but you guys being in the USDA, and the Forest Service being the USDA.
Forest
even better.
Service has been a lot easier to deal with than the BLM, in our experience.
Secretary Perdue is looking at that. I think that's the reason why it wasn't added in the directive from the president, because that's already a focus of USDA. As I'm thinking about that area, and it's hard to always know where Forest Service ends and BLM kicks off, but that's always seemed like BLM, but it could be as you're going across those mountains, that could be.
Yeah, it's kind of that area just east of Salina.
Salina over Green River.
But I mean, there are coverage issues on the BLM land to the east as well.
Absolutely.
And this didn't pinpoint every single area we have trouble at. There's a lot of places that we need coverage, and we'll address those as we go forward.
Alright. Yeah, and it's good to see that there's, some rural coverage being added by that effort, and that it's covering various areas of the state. And so appreciate working with you guys and with AT&T on some of the conversations that we had to try and figure out the locations. Thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have an update from UEN, and I think we're going to have both Ray and Dennis.
Thank you. Those of you, I think most of you know us, who we are, we're with Utah Education and Telehealth Network. And we are the state entity charged with networking schools, colleges, universities, technical colleges, public libraries, and clinics and hospitals throughout the state of Utah. So that's our role and responsibility. We connect nearly 1,600 locations throughout the state. And we take great pride in the amount of broadband we're able to put into those schools. Our minimum standard is 1 gig connectivity for our schools, and we're starting to get requests for 2 10 gig connections at our high schools along the Wasatch Front, which is, and then we always look at the utilization of what it is that they're using, and it's not necessarily wish list, it's actual fact that they are using that much broadband. And so it's exciting to see how much growth we see and how much they really are using what we're providing there. One project we did complete is, just recently, we did do a 100 gig connection from the downtown data center all the way down to the Atomic Wind Data Center in St. George. And we continue to build on that. And it's all done through private partnership. We put out the RFPs and then release the fiber from the telcos. It's been a great relationship. I think two areas of our state where we have always had it very difficult to get the adequate bandwidth has been in Guadalupe County and also down in San Juan County. And those are the two areas of the state where we don't have fiber yet. We have some in San Juan, but not to the extent that we'd like. And so we're continuing trying to find ways to get fiber there. Now, we've been here on the agenda almost every single time, talking about the frustration that we've seen in what we call the DAGA project. We've been working with the FCC and USAC for 2 years now in trying to get our proposal approved, and we've been getting denial after denial. So this past year, I took my E-rate team back to DC. We had Dave Ryan from Strata went with us. That's who we were contracted with for the DAGA project. And we met directly face-to-face with Chairman Pye of the FCC. I found him to be excellent to meet with. He was concerned, he listened, he took copious notes. And I just got an email from him dated December 29th. I just want to read it to you to show you what kind of person he is. This is my perspective at least. Hello, Ray. I mean, talk very personal and directly to me. I hope this message finds you well. As I'm sure you know, UETN's USAC appeal was partially approved in a decision issued yesterday. I just wanted to follow up to say that I'm glad this was resolved. Thank you and your team for meeting with me to highlight the issue. Have a happy New Year. I was just flabbergasted that he would take the time to respond and say, hey, I understand your concerns and it's been partially approved, and thank you for coming. I think it opened up his eyes, and he comes from a state where ruralness is real, just like Utah, and so I felt he was really quite responsive. We have had to go back and do a little bit of give and take from what our initial proposal was, but we're still ecstatic that we finally have approval to move forward. So I have Dennis and Jeff here with me that I'd like to have them explain a little bit more of where we are with the DAGA project, what it's going to require to now move forward, and then also what our vision is for the San Juan project.
Just a couple follow-on comments, and thanks, Ray, and thanks, Kelly.
And you guys have plenty of time, by the way, we're ahead of schedule.
As you know, and Strata, they would tell you this as well, we started planning the Daggett County project probably about 7 years ago. We started talking about how can we build fiber from Manila into Vernal, from Vernal into Manila, and then even getting across the dam over into Dutch John. We started having those conversations when we started expanding fiber into schools and communities where we never thought it would be possible. And as Ray said, we were very excited to hear at the end of December that our appeal was granted. The total cost of the Daggett County project, just to relate to you with Strata, at least our portion of the project, is about $3.3 million. Strata Networks is putting in approximately about $4 million of their own capital to make this project work. And that was a really important point that we were able to make to Chairman Pye, because the FCC is trying to spur investments in rural areas to spur economic development and get this critical infrastructure out there for economic development reasons. And so we were able to share that, and Dave was able to share that too as part of our meetings with Chairman Pye. We're excited to begin the construction of the project this spring. It's going to be about a 70-mile fiber build into both Manila and Dutch John, to the high school and the elementary school. Dave, I think we anticipate it could be 18 months to maybe a 2-year project, depending on how the construction goes. We know there's always unknowns when we start these projects, but the fact of the matter is that the huge administrative burden of getting the funding approved is now cleared, and so we are working together. And we also want to thank Lynn Yoakum from UDOT, because UDOT is such a critical partner in this project and around the state with everything that UATN does. She's been fantastic to work with and has helped with funding commitments and planning, and I think when we're excited that we can finally get going on this project. Quit talking about it. And then Jeff presented recently to the 7-County Coalition Infrastructure Group, and Mike McKee and his group were really instrumental in helping us lobby our congressional delegation. And Jeff's going to talk to you a little bit about our planning on our San Juan County project. We're hoping to apply this year based on the approval we received for Daggett. The San Juan County project we have in 2 stages, and Jeff submitted a handout to everybody, and Jeff can give you some more detail on it. But the first stage of the project we awarded last summer to Emory Telecom. We're hoping to begin work on that project this year. We're going to apply to the E-rate program. The total cost of that project is around $5 million. So we need to develop about $1 million of match after the E-rate portion is funded. And we're optimistic based on the Daggett approval we can get that one approved as well. So Jeff, would you like to give some background and detail on San Juan?
Just to provide a little additional detail. We went after San Juan County at the same time we did with Daggett, but we had to take a step back and we put out a new RFP a year later, and at that point we learned to split it into 2 parts just because it's such an enormous project with some challenges. It goes through both UNUT and U-Tribe as well into a number of chapters of the Navajo Nation. So as Dennis has indicated last year, we did award on the first phase to Emory Telecom. Now we'll be putting together that match so that we can proceed on that. The 7-County Infrastructure has been very supportive of that. Emory has as well, and continue to coordinate with others such as Lynn with UDOT, with the counties involved with this project. And so hopefully in one of the upcoming meetings we'll be able to announce that we have filed the application so that we can get in the loop to receive an award for that project. But we'll keep this group updated as we make progress on with working with the Strata Network on the Daggett project, and excited to start seeing some movement in what we can do down in San Juan County. And so that covers it, unless there's any questions regarding either of those projects.
Did you want to give them an update on the technology inventory you were working on?
I can provide a brief update, please chime in. So originally through Senate Bill 222 that this started with, ETN has been tasked with working with all of K-12 around the state to conduct an annual inventory. We did one 2 years ago. We had 100% response from all K-12, including all charter schools, and this year we just completed another. In early February, that report will go before our board, and then we'll begin to distribute the details. It's nice, we have some longitudinal data that we'll be able to share with this one now, so we'll really be able to see what's been going on in the schools as it applies to digital teaching and learning, and our role with supporting the broadband and working closely with our counterparts on the K-12 side. So excited, perhaps Ray, you'll be able to give a snapshot in the future of some of the things that we, findings of that report.
Yeah, until we actually receive the report, I'm not sure the details of it, but we could probably share that.
Okay. When is there a general release date for that?
We're actually releasing it to our advisory council this month. It's first week in February.
Okay. Cool. Great.
One other thing, we might mention, Kelly, that we're working with Carrie and the state libraries on a wireless filtering bill. It was passed, the Senator Todd Weiler sponsored, and we did a partnership and memorandum of understanding to help rural libraries comply with the requirements of that new state law. And I don't know if you want to comment briefly on that.
I should probably comment part of it offline because the equipment's still on order and it was supposed to be delivered in November, but The amendment to the state bill for filtering requires wireless connections to the internet to be filtered in libraries as well as the hardwired connection. So about more than half of the libraries were already complying. We had 10 libraries that were not in compliance. There was a $50,000 fiscal note attached to this bill, and the solution's gonna cost us $75,000. So it almost covered it, but it's been great working with Wes Ferguson and the staff at UEN to get that ordered and get the equipment and have the tech support from UEN for these small rural libraries that, you know, you ask them if their wireless is filtered, they're like, let me go check, you know, so it's great to have that support from you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, Lynn, did you have a question?
Question. Has there been any thought or talk to the point of, we have the opioid problem, but we also have the pornography problem. And in the UEN, what are you doing to help the school systems in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade where this is really, really critical?
That's a great question.
Did everybody hear that question?
Yeah.
Should we repeat it, right?
You
I'm
can
not
repeat
sure.
it. Yeah, you can repeat it, maybe. Yeah, you can repeat it.
Okay, my question is that we have been working really hard down in our school district to look at this problem of pornography with the school system. And we're working to put a program together, and we would want to know what is it that UEN is doing to help us with this problem. Because in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, especially 4th, that is where parents are telling us that they need help. They really need help.
That's an excellent question. A couple ways that we're addressing that is we're required, if we're going to apply for E-rate dollars to help connect schools, we have to have filtering in place. So our schools are all filtered. Anyone that, when they have devices that they take home, they have to have a way of sending that signal back to the district to go through the filters so that they can't just have straight access to the internet. And then in the content areas, we have the NetSafe program that we provide for the schools, and then we have our professional development staff that work with teachers and showing them how to teach that content and how to access it and all of that through the schools. And then the students also sign an acceptable use agreement. And so when they go through and want to be able to access the internet, want to have a device issued to them, they sign the acceptable use agreement that says that some of the things that they won't do. And most of the schools, when I was a superintendent, what we would require was that parents would have to come in with the student to get the device, and then the discussion would be held about parents don't abdicate your role as a parent in having oversight and watching what your students are accessing, and we would show the parents how to access the history and what the students are looking at. So, you know, it's going to be a problem that you just don't want to, you know, turn a blind eye to. It's critical. You know, it's been, you know, the research shows the negative effects that can have on students. So we take that very seriously. That's an excellent question.
Ken, we have a program that down in St. George that we have been working with. It's called I Have the Power, and it's a 5-step program that when kids see something that they are not comfortable with, they sign at the bottom that they will go to an adult and ask. And I would love to bring the program and show you.
I'd love to see it.
Okay.
We're open to seeing any kind of tools or content that would be helpful. Great. Thank you.
And we've talked a little bit about having Lynn come to the advisory council and present a little bit more on that. They're not quite at a stage to do that quite yet, but we're still working with them on it. So if we don't have any other questions for UEN, our next quick introduction and presentation will be from Natalie Randall, who is San Juan County Economic Development Director, and they obviously are, you know, looking for solutions in that area of the state. It's an area that we've heard a lot about, and so it was nice to get, you know, some progress on the Daggett project that we've been talking about for so long, and so hopefully that will play into this next step of getting some more connectivity in San Juan County. But I thought it would be great to introduce Natalie. She's pretty new to San Juan County, and we've been in communication quite a bit because this is a very high priority for them. And so I'm just gonna let her talk about what they're thinking about.
Thanks, Kelly. So Kelly, well, I'm just a few months into the position with San Juan County, so it's kind of new. It was perfect timing with the governor's 25K rural initiative for us to put out our strategic plan for our county. And in working with our commissioners, our top 5 initiatives, one of the top ones that came out was broadband. That was based off of multiple assessments we've had come through the county that we haven't really done anything with at this point. But what we found that a lot of the industries that would like to relocate to San Juan County specifically, one of the top priorities that they need is broadband. Kind of additionally, just to go a little bit further to kind of paint the picture, we are coordinating as well. We're part of the 7-County Infrastructure Coalition that they mentioned with UEN presentation. So we work directly with them as part of adding broadband to our 25K strategic plan with our county. The coalition made that one of their top priorities as well. So it's definitely now a region focus to get broadband and get San Juan County lit up, so to speak. One of our big projects that's going on right now within our county, where immediately we have control over our roads and everything, is the Spanish Valley area. If you're not familiar with that, that's just right at the border of Moab and Grand County. That's a brand new community that's being pushed in right now, and that whole area is being ripped up for sewer, water, and all that infrastructure. And so broadband is a great time right now to potentially look at implementing that into that area at this time. Additionally, it's been great with GoEd because we've made a lot of connections from our strategic plan. Another connection we've made within kind of the tech industry is through STEM, and with Tammy goes through that through the Utah network, and seeing where we can increase diversity within our workforce. That's something that we're really looking at, and how we can keep kids in rural Utah. And one of the ways that we've kind of started to explore is potentially looking at telecommuting jobs, and the only way we can do that is obviously with broadband as well. So not only getting it to our schools and to our communities, and we're grateful for UEN and the work they've done there, but also getting it to our homes and making sure that all of our residents have them as well outside. I think that's...
Does anybody have any questions for Natalie about?
Yeah, what do you see, you know, just in the coming year, some things that you may be doing just on the broadband front? We try to work as closely with everybody as we can, both within the education and then also on the telehealth side. We have some activity with Emory Telecom right now, with working with Utah Navajo Health System, the health department, and moving up the hospital. But we'd be glad to, you know, work as closely as possible. And I just wonder if you have any kind of events coming up or work that you'll be doing on the broadband front where we may be able to contribute.
Definitely still in like the beginning stages right now of developing a plan for how we'd like to move forward with broadband. But at this point, we're really trying to reach out to our community members and find out what the need is. Within the healthcare industry, I can say the big need is redundancy. So making sure that there are multiple providers and multiple lines in the instance that one goes out and in the process of telemedicine and everything. So that's the biggest voice of our healthcare industry, and they've brought that to our attention. So that's probably initially what we'll look forward with, and then as well as reaching out to the communities. But this is really the beginning stages before having any set plans. Spanish Valley and talking to our commissioners, and even with our roads department as far as other infrastructure, is probably our #1 area of implementing, actually like seeing broadband implemented on the ground at this point. And that's in this year. That'll be happening as far as like February, like this upcoming month, March, as far as putting in that new infrastructure, the sewer sewer and water and pulling up all of that ground and dropping new lines, so.
Okay, thank you. I just saw Val peek his head in for a second. Thank you. So we're just waiting for Val. I'm thinking, can we just take like a quick, maybe 5-minute break? I know that we usually don't have a break in this meeting, but if we could have people just sign Bert's picture, that would be great. Actually, never mind. He's here, so we'll just go ahead with that. Val, you walked in just in time. We're ahead of schedule. So, do you want to come up here?
Sure.
So Val agreed to come in and kind of talk about sort of what the future of some of the broadband efforts at GoEd are, and we appreciate him taking some time to just come in and talk about what they're thinking going forward.
Well, thanks, Kelly. Just wanted to give you a brief background. Many of you probably know this, but the Broadband Network Outreach Center, I should say, was created as part of the Recovery Act funds in the Obama administration. They provided funds for the Outreach Center, and those funds sunsetted about 3 years ago. And during the session 3 years ago, Representative Handy agreed to run and provide a 3-year extension to this office. Over the last couple of years, we've had some ongoing discussions in GoEd about what the future of this would be. Obviously, this is a legislative creation, and the legislature decided to keep this going. We have had some ongoing discussions in GoEd about downsizing our office. We've kind of added a number of programs here and there, and we've talked about offloading them into other operations. In fact, there's a bill going forward this session. It's called the GoEd Streamline Bill, and as part of that, we had some discussions with the governor's office and others about whether we ought to recommend that this office continue, or whether we ought to have a version of it continue, how it ought to go forward. As we discussed this with the governor's office, the feeling was, let's eliminate the office, let's continue some of the functions that it's doing, but let's go ahead and move the office officially, or at least eliminate the office from GoEd. So in a conversation I had, a brief conversation with Representative Handy, he came up and said, hey, what's your feeling about the broadband outreach office? I made the comment, I said, well, the governor's office will be to recommend not to renew it, but to continue some of the functions. And he said, okay, then I'm not going to carry the bill. And so we have made a decision that we're moving forward. We, meaning GoEd, would like to, first of all, thank Kelly for the great work she's done. She's been fantastic in this role, done some amazing things. We plan to move forward. We've asked for $100,000 of money for the budget, that we can continue to do things like the mapping. We would like to continue to convene this group and others. We want to continue doing some of those things. We'll just be doing it by, we won't have a full-time person running this operation anymore. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet. This office will continue to function through June, but we will have a person ready, or at least we'll have a system and a process in place to continue to convene broadband, to continue to have opportunities to work with the mapping function and other things that are deemed important. But we won't have a full-time employee in this role. Ginger, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I'd just like to echo Val's comments that Kelly's done an exceptional job. This is bittersweet in that we are really proud of the work that Kelly's done. But we see this role with the sunset being very rural focused, and kind of have some ideas in regard to how that could work out. It's a little premature into allowing you, or kind of letting you know what some of those ideas are, but we see them continuing on in this advisory committee, continuing on.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say that I will be working with them to kind of figure out how that transition is going to work and take place. So.
I would say I was quite disappointed by this announcement.
your mic, sorry.
So, with this, really is quite the disappointment. I'm sorry to see go this direction, and personally, I don't think this is the direction that we should have gone. I've seen so much come from this.
So we appreciate that feedback. It's always tough to cut a program once it's going. And it didn't come without a lot of serious consideration on the part of a lot of people.
You came down to the Washington County Economic Meeting Summit, and you can see how fast the state, as an example of what's happening, and it's just gonna snowball. And we were way disappointed. I was talking to Lowry Snow, and he was explaining this to me, and we are really disappointed in what you're doing, because you don't have a clue what happens after this meeting as we talk amongst each other and get business put together that your office doesn't do, but you benefit from it. And I'm very disappointed in what you're doing. And you need to know that there's a lot more going on than what you know.
I understand that. I will say this. I've been in 2 public meetings where we've talked about this. We've talked about it openly among agencies and everything else. I have not had one person from the broadband community come up and talk to me about this. Not one.
It was the first we've heard of it, at least for me.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We've talked about it in open public meetings. It's out there, and we've been you all knew this program was gonna sunset after 3 years, or you should have known that. That's just the way it is. And again, I apologize. I told Kelly this. Some decisions are political. And this is partly a political decision.
We'll go to the governor's office.
That's fine. The governor's office was involved in this decision.
And Mr. Cox, Lieutenant Governor, was very disappointed. I talked to him down at the meeting about this, and he's very disappointed because he comes from this field.
I know
And
exactly.
he is gonna fight for us.
Okay, good. He was involved in the decision. I'm just telling you, this is the direction that this is going. I just talked to the governor's office before I came down here. Told them I was coming down to share the news.
I drive 5 hours to come to this meeting from St. George. This meeting is so critical to my business and others. And we rub shoulders and we talk, and we're able to do business here where we can't do it any other place.
And this meeting will continue.
To what extent?
Well, we're gonna continue to have this meeting. I don't have all the details, but we're gonna continue to have this meeting.
Val, Randy Parker with USDA Rural Development.
Could you grab the microphone?
I guess from my standpoint, the timing is a bit troubling because we're seeing the President and the Secretary of Agriculture just elevating this issue. When the President spoke to the American Farm Bureau in Nashville last week, this was one of the items that he talked about was streamlining and getting infrastructure in place for rural communities. In fact, the first chapter of the report to the President of the United States on agriculture and rural prosperity is on broadband and this issue. So I guess, this is my first meeting. I've been in this position for only 2 months. But all I'm hearing about in Washington, D.C. Is the need to connect rural communities. Utah's communities, because of our makeup of our land base, 70% federally owned, 8% state owned, our rural communities are isolated in a big time way. This is the way to connect those for the President's vision on rural prosperity. So, Val, I guess the timing seems really odd to me.
We agree with you. That's why, as Ginger said, she oversees the rural office. This component will probably end up in our rural office. That's where it's going to end up because it is a big deal for rural Utah. It's not going away. It's being absorbed into another responsibility. We're eliminating a full-time position. That's what we're doing. It doesn't mean broadband is going away. It doesn't mean we're not gonna convene this group. We're going to do that. We're gonna continue to service broadband. It will just be in a different manner, and it will probably be under rural, under the auspices of rural Utah.
And we won't get these important people here, Lynn Yoakum, UEN, we won't get them.
My guess is if we invite them to come to this meeting, they will come.
And I think, you know, any feedback that you have that you want to forward on, you know, to the governor's office or the decision makers, I think that that's, you know, if people feel that they need to do that, then I would encourage you to share whatever you feel like you should share. And I appreciate Val coming in and having the conversation.
Now, this has been about a year in the making, the year of the discussions. Again, we've been before 2 subcommittees in the House and the Senate talking about this. There's actually a bill drawn up by a rural legislator that doesn't talk about just this, it talks about all of the go-ed streamlining. And so this isn't anything that is just happening now. It's been out there for quite a while.
Do you have any other questions? Okay, I think we're gonna go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and like I said, you know, if there's feedback that you wanna give to Val offline or to any of the decision makers, I would encourage you to do that. And we appreciate you coming in and addressing our group. And with that, if we could sign the picture for Bert, and then I will let you know, as plans go forward, we'll let you know sort of how things are shaping up and what things are gonna look like, and I'll let you know when the next advisory council meeting will be, and then we'll kinda go from there.
You know, we've taken years to build what we have here. I mean, it took years. How many years have we been involved? 7? And it takes momentum to get to where we are. And this is gonna destroy it. It's gonna destroy it. You don't care?
No, we're gonna continue to do this. If you people want to continue to be involved, then you're welcome to continue to be involved. If you don't want to be involved, then that's up to you. That's up to you guys. We will continue to have this meeting, we'll continue to have this committee, but it's only as good as you guys and how much you want to participate. The difference is, we're just not gonna have a full-time person devoted to it.